God, dude, it's so great to finally meet you in person. How many years has it been that we've been following each other on Instagram? And I've been trying to keep up with your workout regimen, dude. It's like, God, but I guess I'm doing okay, right?
Yes,
okay.
yes. Yeah, no, I was going to look on Instagram because I was like, I wonder how long it's actually been. Because everyone's like, how do you know the guy? And I was like, I'm pretty sure we started following each other on Instagram. And then, I mean, basically you turned in, like now you're like a mentor running business. Here we are.
Look, I feel the same way. A lot of times with mentorship, it's usually, someone younger looking up to someone older or senior. But mentorship can be the reverse, right? It can be older looking at someone who's younger. And I find that I have both. And now I probably have more, again, looking at someone younger because you inspire me. I mean, you're in amazing shape, your drive, your philosophy on things. And so you're a mentor to me, again, working out in the regimen, et cetera. But, and I love that. And that's the great thing, of course, about social media is that, when in your local area or your neighborhood, that you might not have those that are quote unquote in your tribe, right? But what social media does, it opens the world to you, to others, right? To find your tribe. And I love that. And that's how we met.
Yes. Yeah. Alex Hormozy, I know we were talking about him before, but something he said before is if you can't find the 10 people to surround yourself with, because surround yourself around 9 millionaires, you'll be the 10th. So if you can't find that, use social media to surround you around the people that you want to be around. Because sometimes it is hard to find, say, your tribe, where you live or what you're doing. Either it's just population isn't there, or it's just hard. Maybe you don't go out a lot, or it's hard. Then, like you said, use social media, use the tools to find what you want, and use it to help you. Like even just talking to you, like running, you've been running for way more years than I've.
Don't get into the number of years, dude. Please.
Yeah, and so
I want to say it's likely before you were born.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably. But yeah, so I can get that knowledge from you just a phone call away instead of like having to go look online.
And I loved coaching you, virtually coaching you from a distance, first in the triathlon and then the marathon, and you've done amazing. But going back to finding your tribe, I think that certainly personally, when I was recruited and relocated to move down to DC from New York City, which I spent most of my personal and professional life in, it was really a transition. In fact, I'm probably still transitioning in a sense. And there it forced me to really seek out those that I share a similar mindset with. And that's how I fell back into competitive training and racing. It was several years. And when you move to locate, and I say as a full-fledged adult, because my son was older and living away. And so at this point, it was like, oh, wow, I'm just dropped here, right? And I found myself, my best friends are like the guys that I train with and work out with. Certainly, it wasn't necessarily the people that relocated me for business of the company, because there I had a lot of professional responsibilities. I had to hire people, fire people, all that. And so I usually keep somewhat of a distance many times for those I work with. Professionally, you can't help by not become obviously friendly and close, but you have to know, those boundaries. And although that, I hired some amazing people on my team, and they became really good friends of mine. But it was first the professional, versus the personal. But again, my fourth chapter in my training and running, and now really most hybrid, totally unexpected, excuse me, because I wasn't planning on it, honestly. And I think when you're removed from what's comfortable and familiar to you, you have to find, and then you're uncomfortable, you really have to find that place. And it forced me to train again, and some guys that I met at the track said, Bob, you could compete again. I'm like, you're crazy. I can't. It's been so many years and my age, wherever I am. And no, and so I think that we talk about reverse mentorship. they really created belief. And I always say, surround yourself with people that make you better. And to this day, my tribe. I'm gonna give a shout out to my tribe. Ira and Avi and Kai and Alex and Ethan and of course more that I forgot. But they're an important part of my network. And it's interesting where at this stage of my life, for most of my professional career and personal career, my network was professional, right? Especially coming from media and entertainment, their network is so key in the business, and I thrived on that, But it's interesting now that when I think of my network, it's much more than professional. It's also personal, and to me, that's at a higher level. And I really enjoy that, that new concept of what a network can be.
So how'd you get into marketing? I want to dive into that, then how you got to DC, and then now your hybrid lifestyle that I'm also in, I guess. So how did you get into marketing? Went to college for marketing?
I did. I went to college. I went to school at Bryant University at
Kobe Bryant.
Providence, Rhode Island. And it was a great school, small school. But it's interesting because I ran for them. I
did not know that.
I was a collegiate runner as well, cross country and track, and it was fine. But I with my personality and who I am, it lost its appeal to me probably in the sophomore year, excuse me, where it seemed like I was in a fishbowl. And for me, I don't like being in a fishbowl. I really don't. And so I decided at that point that I wanted to just, live overseas, live abroad. And somehow I said, I want to live in Australia. And I want to go to school in Australia. And so I wasn't sure I was going to get there. But, and this is before the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me explain to you. And so I did my research and I applied to schools, and this is, in Sydney and Melbourne. I applied to schools, and of course, without the internet, you're like waiting like 3 weeks for a response. Collected the information, and I actually made my way to Sydney, not knowing anyone, and went to college there for a semester, lived there for 8 months. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And I think that that's part of my nature, is removing myself, from the familiarity and comfort. But I knew that it was more than removing myself. I knew that it was good for me. And so there I studied, and it was one of the best times of my life. I was 20 years old, living on my own. And again, no cell phones, no internet. So, okay, I sent a postcard off to my parents, hey, I'm alive. And then, okay, maybe I get a postcard back or a letter.
Weeks later.
My mom, would send a letter, carrier pigeon. I'm just kidding, right? But of course, it really fortified me as to who I am, and having a real independent streak, being very resourceful, and reimagining what things can be, and that has reflected into my business. So literally, and I was always interested in marketing. I love the aspect of communicating to various different audiences and selling products or services. I'm a combination of left brain and right brain. So the creativity and the more analytical part, and it always drives a lot of times some people that I work with kind of crazy, because I can go from one side, the concept. I love conceptual thinking, but I'm very comfortable moving and looking at analytics and data, and then I do it back and forth. Like what? But that's how my mind works. So marketing was great because there was definitely certainly a creative component in marketing, but also it has to be steeped into performance and stats and et cetera, as far as really defining your business outcome.
Well, I think obviously that's helped you be successful, but you've seen a lot of change over the years. Like you said, there was not even internet, and now we're in the world of AI. So like, how have you been constantly adapting to be a better Bob?
I've always applied what I call a beginner's mindset. And actually, there's a Japanese term called shoshin, and it is about the beginner's mindset. And the beginner's mindset is like everything should be new again, right? You see that a lot also with Stoicism, right? Every day should be your first day, right? And so I've always applied that to that kind of like, okay, I want to learn something because I find that those that deem themselves experts never see possibilities. And so, I may be a professional executive, media entertainment executive, an events executive, and a consultant now, but I always feel that, I want to know more, right? And there lies, I do have a high level intellectual curiosity. That also drives people crazy because I never accept anything on face value. I believe in multiple truths, and so I want to know more. And so there lies, always, gravitating in new technology. I love new technologies. I'm working with a number of clients on new technologies. Also, currently, I'm also an adjunct professor at the Business School of American University, and of course, now soon to be applying AI. Week in and week out fascinates me. So I always have, an open mind to new things.
Yeah, that's great because I feel there's a lot of people, especially I feel like older people. I'm not saying you're old. Be
careful.
I'm not saying you're old, but I'm saying older people.
I wanted to stop you for one second, Isaac. There's a great Abraham Lincoln quote that says, "It's not the years in your life that matter; it's the life in your years." So it's not the years in your life that matter, it's the life in your years. And that really says, you can be 80 years old, okay, and not have as fulfilling as a life as someone who's 27. So it's nothing to do with chronological order.
Yes, I like that.
Okay. And by the way, you can quote me on that.
I'm going to. But no, there's people, they don't want to change. They just say they find a groove or they find something that works. And they try to stick doing that same thing over and over. And eventually, if you don't change, I think there was a quote I read or whatever. It's like, if you're not changing, you're dying. And if you would have tried to stick with the same thing that you learned in college and still try to teach that today, you wouldn't be teaching. So it's obviously good that you're always, like you said, have a beginner's mindset and not try to be the expert in the room, even though sometimes you are, and always learn and have that mindset, because if not, you wouldn't obviously probably be where you are today.
Well, I always try to apply that, and that comes a lot with who I am as a brand, right? And one of the attributes that I consider myself as a brand, I'm a seeker. And when you're a seeker, you physically look for things that inspire you, give you energy. Intellectually, you do. That's who I am. I mean, there's no grass that grows beneath my feet. So look, I think that with the seeker, there's always challenges too, but I never become complacent, and it gives me an edge as well as it fortifies me.
Let's dive deeper into the challenging part.
Yeah.
So you said you did mainly marathons, half marathons, and then recently moved to DC. I don't know how many years ago.
It's hard to believe. It's been 10 years.
10 years.
Which is crazy, yeah.
And kind of got out of your group of friends.
Comfort zone, yeah.
Comfort zone. And just recently competed in a high rocks.
Yeah, yes, I was a big time runner. I did marathons. I have sub 3 hour marathons. I raced in college, high school, so at a young age, and then I competed even right after college in New York races. And it's interesting because even my journey before pre-High Rocks, I tried the marathon a couple of times. And I really had a goal for myself to break 3 hours, right? It's kind of like that mythical goal, right, for a lot of runners. 4 hours and 5, everyone has it.
Yep.
And I had a marathon. It was 3:01, and I ran that. And then, I was in New York, and I had two just really bad New York City marathons. And I remember distinctly, it was, I got 3:19. I know some people say, what, 3:19 is great. And New York is a hard and challenging marathon course because there's a lot of bridges which are up hills and et cetera. And I remember afterwards, and when my wife hears this, she'll remember that, my girlfriend at the time, I was in her apartment in the tub in the bathtub post-marathon. And I was in the bath, and I was crying and throwing up at the same time. And I said to myself, no more. I'm not going to do a marathon anymore, and this sucks. And I'm done, right? And I don't know how old I was, maybe it was 27 or something. And so I was kind of in like the running wilderness, as I call it. I ran, but I did very little racing, And then I decided just said to myself, Bob, you're not done. And I re-engineered myself to train with a more competitive group of runners around Central Park Track Club, and got myself to the shape that I thought I could achieve that goal. And so I actually came down to DC where we are and ran the Marine Corps Marathon because it is a flat and fast course to get a personal best. And I did. I ended up breaking 3 hours in 2:58. And I did it again, 2 years later. And I tell that story, and we'll get to High Rocks. I tell that story because life is rarely linear. There's zigs and there's zags, there's ups and there's downs. And I'm a mentor, of course, to a number of friends and younger. And I tell that story because, you have to have patience, but you also have to believe. And so it might not be working today, but it might, work, tomorrow or another time. And so, it took me over 8 years to break 3 hours. I know it sounds crazy, but it did. And that's my story. And I think that could I have gone faster? Probably, but I reached a point that, I felt full, right? And I felt full, and then life, sweeps you away, and I had a child, my son Ben, and professionally, firing on all cylinders, as they say, in media entertainment and running, marketing and business development teams, et cetera. And so, yes, to fast forward, being recruited and relocated down to DC, I started training, as I mentioned, I started training again with this awesome group of guys, my Beast Bros, and had that belief to training. So I started racing again and really, into my fourth chapter, of training, right? And so it was like last August, I got injured, again, doing interval work, serves me right. At my stage, to do 400 intervals, but I pulled up badly. And it was a bad pull. It wasn't just like, oh, it hurts. Like I could barely walk. Type of. And so some of the guys that I was training with, they mentioned High Rocks. I'm like, what is that? I had no idea, what that was. And so my High Rocks journey was totally unexpected, so unplanned and unexpected. And actually I signed up for singles. We made a trip, out there, three of us in Vegas. But when I signed up, I really didn't understand all the 8 events. And for those who are not familiar with High Rocks, I know there's a number of listeners and viewers might not be familiar with High Rocks, but it's 8 events, right? It's 8 events, and you run between events, everything from ski erg to rowing, to sled push and pull, to wall balls, to weighted lunges. Am I missing something? Burpee broad jumps. And you run almost, 1,000 meters between two. And so, but I didn't realize, I said, oh, okay, oh, wow, it's almost 400 pounds that I have to push the sled. And so I realized that wow, this is totally not only what I didn't expect this, but it's like, oh God, I'm a runner. I'm not this, and like, but I committed to do it, and it put me on a journey very consistent with going to Australia in college, to moving to New York City, to getting into the media entertainment industry, where you have to put yourself in a position sometimes that scares you. Because then it, for me, builds that adrenaline and the dopamine also. And it did. There's no doubt, started training, and I know I'm probably being a High Rocks geek, so all my friends are doing High Rocks or High Rocks folks. It was a process. I first had to learn the 8 events. The only one I did really somewhat consistently was lunges, right? The other ones I'm like, I don't know how to do, so I had to learn just technique and just how to do it. And then I had to apply, the distance and the weight to that, which was new. And then it was the sequencing, running between, right? And then adding and stacking, all that stuff. And then I got a coach. I'm going to do a shout out to Jake Gibbs, who's awesome, amazing. So Jake, when you see this, I'm giving you a shout out. Who's a world-class High Rocks and triathlon competitor. Found him, Jake and I connected on Instagram because I knew at that 8 weeks leading into High Rocks, I really needed to fine-tune things. I really need, again, being beginner's mindset we talked about, I was still certainly a beginner, right? And so I knew that, no, I don't know everything. And I didn't want to leave Vegas where the competition was and saying, if only I knew. And so Jake helped me on about technique, about strategy, about just, again, adding, certain gym work to certain events, match that up. Which was really helpful. And, the whole process, as I said to someone the other day who's doing his first High Rocks, I'm 6 to 7 weeks, in the gym or running, doing the events. It felt like I was certainly in the military. And for those in the military, you're saying, what, you're crazy? No, it really felt, from dawn, just getting up in the cold mornings. And Isaac, this so well because you and I text each other at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I know that I get a response back because I'm an early riser at 5:30, and so I read, I meditate, get myself going, and then work out. So I did have a system in place. I know we talked about that. Right? I did have a system in place, so I had a foundation, being a competitive runner. But I never done something like High Rocks, and so literally, it was really only in that last 8 weeks before the competition that actually I felt I could do it. I really, oh God, I still had that fear, and that scared aspect of it, can I do this? And really 8 weeks, I developed that belief that I can do it, right? And I think that applies to a lot of things, in life, professionally and personally, is that so much of it is about belief and trusting yourself. And I said that when I fast forward to the competition in Vegas. And it's that was one thing I said to myself. I was the second day of the competition and for men's open singles, and I kept repeating that to myself in my head: trust yourself, trust yourself. And I think a lot of it is whether it be professionally or personally or athletically. A lot of people I find don't have that confidence, and I do believe that once I set forth, I'm going to do it. And that's just my nature. Again, going back to going to Australia on my own and again, professionally, making it to New York City. I do have that belief, and also I'm very resourceful. And I think that's really important to have those skills. And so I got there and I said, trust yourself. And of course, it was just my first time in that atmosphere. Of course, mostly everyone, not everyone, are cut. They're jacked. They're in shape. They're like you, Isaac. Yeah. All right. Multiply that by 5,000. Yeah. Not everyone, but oh wow, this is not like an average road race, right? But I knew I was prepared. So and my friends Ira and Avi here, you'll be listening to this, watching this. Ira competed in doubles, and so I watched doubles the day before, right? Mine, and I was singles the following day. And I always joke that was like the worst thing because I wanted to cheer on, my friends, right? But all I was thinking about as I was sitting in the stands or going on cheering, like, can I curse, by the way? Can I say holy shit?
Go for it.
Okay. You didn't give me like the standard rules. Like I don't want to be bleeped out like 18 times,
No,
right? Okay.
No, go for it.
So I said, holy shit, I have to do the full thing because in doubles, in high rocks, you can split it at 50-50 or say whatever it is. But oh shit, I got to do the whole thing, and that like kind of so psyched me out a bit. I was like in this mindset, like, oh shit, I got to do that because I saw them grinding. And so I had to get my head together, again, talking to, my friend, and I did see my coach that he was competing. And I got myself together, to finally, say, oh, no, you're good. And of course the competition, it's so intense. It was, again, one of the hardest, most, intense thing that I've ever done in my life. And I say that from, completion is completion. That was, I only had 2 goals. My first goal was to get to the starting line uninjured and healthy. Okay, because obviously there's 8 events, a lot can happen, and I was training for 6 months. And the other thing is just to finish, right? I didn't have a time, and everybody said, what do you want time? I said, I really don't have a time, and actually it was probably really good for me that I didn't, because throughout my whole running and racing career, I had splits to hit for training. I had times to hit, for my teams. I had pacing. I had places to finish, on the podium, off the podium, whatever it may be. And for the first time, I didn't, and it felt really liberating, to me that I didn't have that, right? And so, but I go back to just that experience, right? Beyond, I finished, right? I completed it, and it is that it really made me feel uncomfortable, the whole process. But it was the best thing for me. It was amazing. Of course, I did. Once I finished, I said, "This sucks. I'm never doing this again." There's a video of it. I'm never doing this again. It was like the bathtub scene, and after the New York City Marathon, I'm never doing this again. And it did, but you step back. It was very fulfilling, and everyone needs those challenges in their lives. I know it's not for everyone, and so it's certain individuals, but I know what gets me going, right? What fuels me up. And I need that in my life. I need that, professionally. I need that mentally, physically, intellectually, all those things, emotionally. And so that covered, aside from the professionally, that covered a lot of my buckets. And so afterwards, it was finished, and it was great. And when you do competition, I'm sure, Isaac, you felt the same way, being so successful in the triathlon and your first marathon, a few months ago, that you step back, a little bit and you reflect on it. And I think it's always good to do that. I think, we were talking earlier about, some of my, thoughts in regards to business and philosophies. And one of it just being thoughtful. And I would say go slow to go fast. And go slow to go fast means, sometimes you do have to step away and reassess. And it's okay to be thoughtful. There's so many times I've been in organizations where, okay, do, and there's no real strategy. There's no real thought in it. There's no, and so Hyrax stepping back and be thoughtful. And, it was so funny because I called my wife afterwards, couldn't make it to Vegas, and she said, "How do you feel?" And I said, I feel really good. I'm really, really satisfied." And she said, "Are you sick?" Because I'm never satisfied. I always, she knows for years, like, God, I could have done this in the race, and I should have done that corner, closer in this tangent, and so forth and so on. And yes, no doubt, I could have done many things better in terms for my first high rocks. But after the competition, and even months later, because it's already been, we're talking about several months later, I felt full. But I say feeling full is different than being content or complacent. Feeling full means it just fills you up, right, for that moment in time. And I really want to always distinguish that. Say, because everyone's like, you want more? Yeah, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm full right now, and it's okay to be full at times. So that's that's kind of my journey, my High Rocks journey. But it so fits in perfectly with who I am personally, professionally, and all those those legs of the table, as I call it, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, because they're all intertwined. And I think, certainly as you progress and get older in life, I find personally that they're all integrated for me now. When I was younger, as a young executive and just grinding in New York and just again just doing and being promoted, achieving again, working in many high profile companies like Disney and Viacom, now Paramount, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Madison Square Garden into MSG, and then digital startups. Sometimes you lose that aspect of the why, and everything is put into compartments. So I liken this stage of my life. I'm my own consultant. I'm a principal and founder of Mitchell Partnership Alliances, and it is a B2B content strategy and planning company. And I have many clients from Fortune 500 companies to tech companies. To some associations, some nonprofits across a number of sectors. And I help align organizations across content, audiences, platforms, and partnerships. And many times I love that challenge because so many times companies are siloed. We have this department over here, that department over here, that department over there. And so I help align them, but also because on the creative side, I'm a strong conceptual thinker, as we talked about earlier. So I see content. Literally across formats and platforms. And I mean formats being, whether it be video-based, audio-based, text-based, or print. No, I'm sorry, audio-based, text-based, video-based, and image-based. Excuse me. And across a variety of different platforms, whether it be the web, whether it be social, whether it be email, etc. And because I think, like that, it allows me to put that much more value into the work that I do for clients because I'm not necessarily regimented on, being a line item. So, but that has all come together because I brought that integration into, both professionally and personally.
Real quick, before we move past...
I didn't take a breath.
No.
I? Sorry. And I apologize for that jumble.
No. I like it.
Edit that.
It was good. Before we move on from the High Rocks, I want to dive in about, you wrote a blog thing after the High Rocks, and one of the quotes you have is, "It's not failure, but low aim that is sin."
Yes.
What does that mean for you personally?
Well, for me, it starts with that I am just so frustrated when I see mediocrity. Where I see the bar, or people accepting the bar being so low, right? That to me is like, okay, and again, I don't mean to cast judgment on those, but to me, it's like almost giving up, right? And so that's what I mean, like, it's not failure, it's low aim, that's sin, but also with putting yourself out there, right? And being uncertain, what it might look like, right? In any situation. It might fail, it might succeed, it might be somewhere in the middle. And that's what high performance is about, right? Is putting yourself out there and being fearless, honestly. And so that's who I am. My friends know that, my family know that I am relentless on that. And so that's just my style.
Yes. Haley knows, even Gavin, like people.
Hey, Haley. Hey, Gavin.
Yeah. People.
By the way, I do have an audience here.
Yeah. Yeah. But many people, we'll just say the average person, is comfortable with being average, and they don't ever go after certain things. And like we have the same mindset. Like something I love about you is like when we talk or we have a conversation, there's not many people that I know of that talk with it where I'm like, they think the same. Like they're like, you're like, you send me books like the winning book, and you sent me one other one. And
Tribe of Mentors.
Yeah, and
Tim Ferriss.
And it's all about the mind, mentality, and like that's what I like. But there's so many people where I'm like you said, we're not judging people, but there's so many people out there that don't push themselves. And yes, I'm like, yes, we should not judge them.
I am judging people sometimes.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting into.
And by the way, I just want your audience to know, your listeners to know that I do have that witty, dark, sarcastic humor in me. And it was all polished up in New York City. So
yeah, but that's
always with a wink.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is sometimes I feel like maybe more, I guess, if you have friends, but you need to, I guess, push them sometimes out of their comfort zone if they're just gonna sit there, I guess. Because it's so hard, I feel like sometimes with trying to push someone else to say get out of their comfort zone when what if they don't want to, or what if they don't want that? But like you said, there's so many people, I like that quote, it's not failure but low aim that is sin. How many people don't push themselves? And then afterwards you sit back, like now if you look back on your high rocks, you realize, yes, it was hard, but you did it. And then you realize how strong your mind is. And if you put your mind to it, you train for it, you can accomplish it.
Going back to, again, because I'm an athlete and I relate it to my professional life as well. Let's speak about organizations, business organizations, right? First of all, there always is, no matter what company, large, small, or in the middle, there's always many people have that fear of the unknown, right? It's much safer, right, to just do what we have been doing. I'm not going to get fired, maybe. I'm going to keep on doing this. And so you have that consuming, a lot of organizations. But the fact is, standing still is not an option. In fact, it's riskier to stand still. Look at the AI, acceleration and with new technologies. But so many people, cling on to legacy, and I've worked with a number of organizations, and because it's familiar, and they think it's safe, but it really is not. And so I look at that again. In that context, of being fearless. And there's other things as well. Of course, there's, I always call it lack of imagination. I mentioned that I feel like I'm a strong, conceptual thinker, right? And so for me, I always see possibilities. And I always sit back for having that beginner's mindset. For those that deem themselves experts, never see possibilities. And so for me, it's like, yes, I can see it, but there's so many of those, again, that do not have, that creative imagination. They're locked in their boxes. All right. Oh, that's what we did before. And throughout my career, I've always found ways, and sometimes easier than others. I've worked in a lot of, large organizations as well as some digital startups. And so a lot of it, too, is being that leader. We talked about finding your tribe. Being that leader, because you have to surround yourself, too. You just can't do these things on your own, right? You have to find partners, right? Partners in crime, allies throughout the organization, right? To not only be there for you, but believe in you, right? And help you, okay? Or advise you to get these certain things done. And look, I'm an incrementalist, and being an incrementalist means that I don't have to have the whole loaf of bread. I'm fine sometimes with just a half a loaf. It's okay, right? Because sometimes that's where you make the most difference, is around the edges and getting into the middle. But as I always joke, or sometimes not joke, I call myself, I'm a savage and a surgeon. And I'm a savage because I'm a beast in my mentality and my energy and my focus. But I'm a surgeon because I'm a strategist. I see things, I observe things. And so that makes me a savage and a surgeon. But I think sometimes it holds, companies back, of that. I think also it's like, it's about working hard. And look, I'm reading a great book right now called The Comfort Crisis. I highly recommend it. I'll buy it for you, Isaac, by Michael Easter. In fact, I'm giving a shout out because I think you listened to the Huberman Lab too, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he was a guest a few months ago.
Okay.
I'm like, oh my God, this is great. But he talks about that, so many people in society, they just go for what's comfortable, what's easy, right? And by the way, they bank on that, and then they decide, oh, well, later in life, I'm not feeling good, but it's too late to be uncomfortable. And so being uncomfortable throughout your life is okay. I go back to Stoicism. You and I love Stoicism, but Marcus Aurelius says, the human condition is about suffering. It's okay. That's life, right? And so go back to with organizations. This change is hard. Transformation is hard. It's never easy. There are processes. There are steps. But I found that many times I've worked with, and some not, with those that just don't have the energy. There's a lack of that desire, the lack of energy. So I find that that holds organizations back. And I get to circle back something I said earlier about complacency. You fall into that rut of being complacent. And a lot of organizations, as I always mention, some that have, there's always those that their one goal is self-preservation. It is not about advancing the company and the goals or achieving numbers. It's about, okay, I'm going to be here, for 20 years. I'm good. I'll get a paycheck. I'm good. Well, are you really good? Is that the best for the organization? Is that the best for yourself? And so I always ask those questions like, okay, am I the only one that's not good? There needs to be more of us, including yourself, right?
Yeah.
There need to be more of us because it's not good, right? And that's why I gravitate toward the comfort crisis, because it is about pushing yourself hard. And I know there'll be viewers and listeners saying, oh God, that can't be me. Yes, it can be you. It can be you. Call Bob.
Yes. So there's a quote from the book that you got me, Winning, by Tim Grover, and it says, winning requires you to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And Winning, I will say, is the first book that I've ever probably finished as fast as I did. And I gave it to my cousin. He's a senior in high school, he plays football. And he read it because I was like, you need to read this book because it dives so deep, we can dive deeper into this later about like the pain cave. Yeah. But it dives deep into some of the greatest athletes ever to be alive and how their mindsets were. And some of them, you could say, yes, they're over the top. But to be the best in your field or your trade, you have to do things that are very, very different and strict. And yeah, they might seem crazy to some people. Like, why are you waking up when you're Kobe Bryant at 4 a.m. to go shoot for 3 hours before the second person on your team comes in to even warm up? But
it's Mamba mentality.
Yes,
thank you.
He was one of the best, or if not the best. Same with Michael Jordan. And they were all trained by this guy, Tim Grover.
Yeah.
And even Tim Grover, wasn't he a trainer or something? And then he wanted to see how he could make more money, and then he realized he could focus on training personal athletes, or it wasn't like that then or something. Yeah,
and make a very successful business.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned Winning by Tim Grover, because it's one of those books of the last few years that has really stuck with me. And I have highlighted it. I've written in it. I've included Post-it notes, and to this day, I go back to it, and I have some of my favorite quotes. I don't know if you want to hold that for later.
Yeah, no, let's hear them.
Because I I actually get really emotional. And I know people's like, what are you talking about? Because when you read a book like Winning or other books, if you're a certain type, it's not just reading the words, it's feeling it, right? And so I did prepare some quotes. Right?
Yeah.
And by the way,
while you're getting those, so you were talking earlier about how when you're sitting in a boardroom, some people just are fine with their job and stuff. And I was going to ask you, how often do you feel like, am I crazy? Like, am I the only one thinking this? And when you read the book Winning, if you have that mindset or that mentality, for me, it was like, holy cow, there's other people out there that think the same or like can dive deep into that. And it makes you realize maybe I'm not going crazy, because sometimes I'll come home, I'll talk to Haley about something, and I'm like, it's either I'm crazy and like, or it's just these people do not think anywhere even close to the same level or concept that I think. And everything that I say or do right now is hard to say this is right, because I don't really have any, like, you have stuff that you've done, it's worked, you've made a name for yourself. For me personally, like in that aspect of life, I haven't really made something that someone could be like, oh.
Hey, Isaac, don't sell yourself short. Yes, you have.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yes, you have. You know, we're here today.
Yeah.
We're in the Double Take podcast.
That's right.
And I'm so grateful to be a guest here with you. Okay. Yeah. And I know what you're saying about, am I insane? And also, am I the only one? Right. And it's interesting because I am going to read a quote because Tim Grover says, and I'm going to put my glasses to read this.
Yep, you're good.
Excellence is lonely. No one will ever understand what you've gone through to get where you are. And yeah, let's face it, it can be lonely, being that kind of thinker, right? Now, part of my brand is I'm a missionary. Now, I don't mean that from a religious standpoint, but I believe, this is just who I am, is that I want to bring others along, okay? And not to convert or convince, all that stuff, because it's not just good enough for it to stay within me, right? And maybe that's the mentorship coming out, that I really want to bring others along. And I feel that it's what's called impact, right? And I think I might have shared with you my purpose. Everyone should have a purpose in life, and it should change, across different stages of your life. And I really landed on mine, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it's to inspire others to have the courage to be more than they thought they could be. And it's across the board, whether it be clients, friends, family, just having conversations with somebody, on the airplane. I was flying back from the West Coast a couple of weeks ago. That's me, right? And it's not about collecting material things. I actually don't care about materialistic things. It's making that impact, right? And so when I say, like, part of my brand, I'm a missionary, I am, but it's, again, going back to that boardroom, okay? Especially in large organizations, even other organizations, sometimes you just got to be tentative sometimes, because and you got to be patient, and sometimes patient is not my strongest virtue. I admit it, and those that are listening and watching, yes, they know what I'm talking about. But you do, and that's why, going back to, you have to be a savage and a surgeon, right? A savage is go for it, dude. Be the beast you are, and a surgeon being very strategic. Really find that right time, all that stuff. And you do have to, I always believe too that, it's about placing small bets sometimes. I talk about, half a loaf sometimes better than a whole loaf, right? It's placing small bets. So having that idea, right, that might be a little bit out there or more ambitious. I have been accused of being too ambitious. Okay.
It's better than not being too ambitious.
I have been accused, and in fact, the joke is, and I, especially moving down from New York City to DC, I've been told a number of things, I have to say, by the locals here. Okay.
All good.
Well, you know my sense of humor.
Yeah,
I'm edgy.
yeah,
I'm dark.
yeah.
So I'm going to turn this around.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this around, dude. And so I remember talking about that boardroom, and one of my positions at a company that remain unnamed. My responsibility was building a new website, marketing, all of that, right? And I remember being in the boardroom, and it was a small group of executives on the executive team, and I had someone across from me who was the IT specialist. All right, don't mean to be critical or judgmental. So I was presenting kind of like my status, the wireframe of the site, where we're at, all that stuff, right? And I took a pause. I did take a pause. And this person is looking at me with a blank stare. And so the guy next to me, the head of sales, said out loud, "Bob, you're speaking way too fast for her." And of course, Bob, in his edgy, sarcastic manner, was thinking to myself, I didn't say this out loud, she needs to think a lot faster. So I did repeat myself, but of course, I'm not, this person's the topic expert, right? But I go back to, I didn't mean to get an attention, but I go back to, you talk about the boardroom, selling ideas. Sometimes it is about accommodating, your audience, and know your audience, right? Know your audience is very important as well as selling in ideas. But, being a missionary, many ways is, I'm a salesperson. I mean, we're all selling ideas. For those that say, "Oh, I don't sell." No, we're all selling all the time. You're selling yourself, Isaac, being a huge fitness influencer and the creator of the podcast here, and being the person you are. I'm selling myself, right? We're all selling constantly, and it might not be in a very tangible way sometimes or direct way, but we're all selling ourselves. So that's the part about being a missionary. So
yes, and you're big on, I know when we've talked before about building a brand.
Yeah.
Like you are a brand, and then you've told me personally on the phone before, like build a brand, like make the brand. You're the brand. And one thing good about when you become the brand, like no one can duplicate that. There's only one Isaac Drain. There's only one Bob Mitchell. There's only.
By the way, the world is thankful for that, for Bob Mitchell. I will say that.
I'm sure. But yeah, and I do like that. If you can build a brand, even like Chris Bumstead, he was a big time bodybuilder, won all these Olympias, and there's been people that have done the same thing, but they never build a brand around themselves. They get out of it, and then they're working a normal job or they're trying to find income. And he built a brand around himself, and obviously, like you said, probably wasn't just him. He has people helping him, and you always need people, other opinions. If not, sometimes it's hard to be. One, it can be very selfish to be like, I'm going to try to figure this all out on my own. But at the same time, it could take you years to figure it out. If you just brought in a few people, like you, for example, or someone who knows things that can help you, and honestly is willing to give it to you for free, is a big benefit, because like you said, you're a consultant. Like that's your job. You charge people to help them out, and I get it from you for free.
Sometimes I feel I don't charge enough, by the way.
Yeah, charge more. But every Monday morning, I get a text from you with a quote or something, and one, it's a great way to start off the week, and yeah. So,
but going back, can I go touch upon the brand thing? Sometimes it takes time. It really does. It has sometimes to evolve, in the whole process of that, right? And I think in tandem with building your brand is actually knowing who you are, right? And then finding your voice. And I know there's a lot of, just things being thrown out there. Oh, this is my brand, and this is the company's brand, this is my brand. And people just throw things out there. Oh, this sounds like a great attribute. And I believe to be a real strong brand, I'll speak, for my brand, you have to feel it. Just when we're talking about, reading those, quotes from, Winning, Tim Grover, you have to feel it. If it doesn't feel, that should be your gut feel, your gut instinct. Do I feel this? And everything that I talk about my brand, being the seeker, we talked about being the seeker, being the missionary. I'm a missionary. I'm a connector, that's also part of my brand. I believe in the multiplier effect. That's how we're together, dude. Right? Whether it be in person or online, virtual, I believe, that's how the universe works. I enjoy that, that's, who I am. I'm a disruptor. There's no doubt. I'm not, comfortable necessarily with the status quo, or I see things that could be more. Those are all my brands. I'm as I call it, I'm a offensive coordinator, as I want to say it, being that I don't like playing defense. I like playing offense, right? And so that's also part of my brand as well. But it's also, again, being comfortable with all those things for me, and having that voice.
So, did you live in New York City or outside of New York?
No, I lived right
in the
New
city.
York City was great.
So, what was that like?
It was amazing.
Okay.
It was great. Look, I think that I love New York. I miss New York. It's it's so different from being down here in DC, and it's more than just the energy. Everyone's, oh yeah, things are fast, and there's no doubt they are, right? But for me, it's the vibe, it's the moxie, it's the attitude, it is the all those things that come to play. New York is actually its own character, right? Beyond the physical geographic location. So literally after graduation, I knew I grew up in Connecticut. I mentioned I went to school at Bryant University. And again, this is part of my journey, consistent with Australia, consistent with professionally, consistent with High Rocks, is I knew I wanted to move to New York City. First of all, I wanted to get into advertising marketing because I knew that was the place, Madison Avenue, where all the large agencies, all the large brands, everything happened there primarily, for advertising marketing. Now, I didn't shy away from that. Many said, okay, I'm fine with, staying here. And again, everyone has their own thing. But because, as we talked about how, again, it's not failure but low aim, that's sin. That's high aim for me. And so I forged my path, and it's never easy. I mean, I don't want listeners and viewers to say, God, yeah, but it's hard. Of course it's hard. All right. I didn't know anyone. In the business, but I was relentless. Again, for the internet, for the cell phones. Yeah, writing letters and knocking on doors. And as I said to someone the other day, being in so many places that I shouldn't be. And I advise people, be in places you shouldn't be. Because that's where you find opportunity. And I remember distinctly, and I'm a little bit older than you, but I consider you a younger brother.
That's right.
That you look back and there's so many, you remember the factual thing, like this is the day that my son was born, and that's all. Yeah, you remember those dates. But it's those experiences and feelings that you never forget. And one was, again, going back to your question about how living in New York City and professionally I came down, was I remember my senior year in college, and everyone went to spring break, all good, and I did that before. And I said, no, I'm going to actually stay back, and I'm going to start interviewing. I need to get a job, after graduation. I want a job after graduation. So I remember I stayed in this, made my way down. I stayed in this dumpy hotel near Times Square. It's called Milford Plaza. I think it's been torn down since. But I remember I stayed there for 3 nights, and I remember, obviously by myself. And I remember it was this crappy week in mid-March. During spring, it was freezing rain. It was all that shit, and of course, my roommates, friends were in Fort Lauderdale, and I get back, in the lobby, and I looked in the mirror, and I said, I'm drenched. I'm drenched. She's just, and I said, this is what it's all about. And you never forget that. You never forget those moments. And it's those that don't have those moments that, I couldn't imagine, right? And so, that was part of my journey, consistent with my brand. You grow with your brand, but it's been consistent. So, and 3 days after, graduation, maybe 4, I got an offer. And I knew that I didn't want to, I love my parents, but I needed to move on for my growth. And so literally I got an offer Friday afternoon, again, a few days after graduation, and they say, can you start on Monday? I'm like, yes. Okay, so literally, because it was an opportunity, right? Don't miss those opportunities. The window's open. If the door is open a crack, kick it open, right? And so I didn't have a place to live. I was telling this story to a friend a few weeks ago. I didn't have a place to live. I just said, I'll be at work on Monday morning. And so it was one of these things like, I don't know how I get it. Some of these things, I really don't know how I did it in hindsight, but I did. I found a place, because I literally I had a duffel bag. Literally, duffel bag of my clothes, stuff like that. And I think like my first week or couple of weeks, I lived in the YMCA. The YMCA, it was, because I knew it was a few blocks away from my office. So I said, okay, I can make it into the office in time. And it was a YMCA where like bare bones, a bunk bed, a wood floor desk, all this shit. And, you shared a bathroom with like, 12 other rooms. It was so bare bones. And I tell this story like, you did. People will say like, you did? Yeah, I did. I'm not into the comfort crisis, And so that's how I started off my career, and then I built it. And stop me if I'm getting so long-winded in this answer.
I know CPR.
Yeah, because remember I told you that I can fill a 3-hour lecture, at American University. But I made my way, but I knew I wanted to be in New York. It's where the action is, and lived most of my life on the Upper West Side. I miss it. My son is a native New Yorker, the only one in our family, and grew professionally in the media and entertainment industry.
How many people would have made so many excuses, though, about how would I get to New York City? Oh, no, I can't start Monday, or I can't find a place to stay. But like you said, you made it happen because you wanted it to happen. But I feel like so many people nowadays, just in general, they need all these benefits. They need all this stuff. And you basically kind of have a story, kind of like Alex Hormozi, about sleeping on the gym floor, sleeping in the YMCA. And then back to what you were saying about the cold, freezing rain. Your friends are in Fort Lauderdale. And you said even earlier, like hard times. There is the times where and now you've seen it actually happen full circle, but there's times where you question everything. Like, is this worth it? And you have those moments, like you said, like, this is it. Like, like in those cold, like, this is it. But you didn't know yet, like, was this actually going to be it? And there is times where you're in those times where you're like, okay, this is it. You feel like you're there. You're in these lonely chapters. And obviously it worked for you, but those are the times where I think it's the toughest to keep going sometimes. And I want to just let everyone know, like, there's times where you're going to be like in these, especially on days where it's cold, rainy, and you're in New York City where it's not sunny. Everything's better when the sun's out.
And you're dripping wet.
Yeah.
Your suit is just soaked.
Yeah. I don't exactly remember what I was going with that, except those times, like you said, all your friends are down there, but you knew, like, this is where I need to be, and to work, or just to go make it happen. Basically, like you said, if there's a crack in the door, go make it happen. Even if there's not a crack, make a crack, get in there. So how did you then get into these big companies like Disney, Paramount, NBC, Comedy Central, which I don't know if they were back then, but like today in 2025, they're some of the biggest things out there.
Yeah. I want to go back to the beginning of the question. You wouldn't be human if there wasn't any doubt, right? You wouldn't be, everyone has this, in the back of your mind, we of course, we're talking about winning, that dark place, right? That Tim Grover talks about. We all have that, right? But it's about coming to terms with, it's having that belief. It's having that belief, and I've always, felt that I can get it done some way. And again, part of my, one of my attributes is being extremely resourceful. Extremely resourceful. I'm a survivor, and I knew I was going to find a way. I think that's the best way of saying in all those circumstances, and it's never linear. This, to your viewers and listeners, it's not, a straight path. There are hard times, as we know, but it's having that belief, but also being, I'm a highly organized individual. And so there are others that have the belief, but then can't find that path, right? How do I get it done, right? And so for me, it's because I'm a strong conceptual thinker, I actually, and I believe that this is the way I train as well, I'm big on visualization. And for those that listeners doesn't know, visualization, athletes use a lot in their minds to visualize what the competition is going to be, what race day is going to be, even in your workouts. Isaac, you might use it. Say, hey, I'm doing this many reps, this set, and that, and I'm totally very present. And so it's part of that saying, that's the way my life is going to look like. And so painting that picture. Now, again, on the other side is many times, people paint that picture like, oh, I'm kind of disappointed. Like, why? I want that life. Well, that life takes hard work. That life takes fortitude. That life, it takes all those things that many people, for whatever reason, are not, willing to make sacrifices or compromises. And so I think that that's so much, a part of it.
Everyone wants the Ferrari, but they don't want the hard work to get the Ferrari.
Absolutely.
Yes, and
by the way, as I said earlier, I'm actually not into the Ferrari. Yep. All good, everyone likes Ferrari because I'm not into material things. Yes. So, and that goes back to core values, and not to say that it's all good, nice cars, all good, nice, but for me personally, it's about relationships, it's about experiences, it's about self-growth or self-actualization, all those things. Those are the things that are on a much, much higher rung for me than the Ferrari. I didn't want it.
No,
just the Ferrari. It's all good.
It's all right. So let's go back to the Paramount Disney.
Yeah.
Were they?
So you answer your.
Were they as big
question.
then, though?
Yeah. To answer, so I'm glad you brought it because there was a career transition for me. I mentioned that I got into advertising. When I started out with making $11,000 a year. That's like poverty.
A year?
Yes, that's poverty, dude. But that's poverty. That's 1984. Anyhow, that's poverty, and that's low for 1984. But what part of that was in the industry is they wanted to see who could survive. Honestly, I mean, and having an apartment in New York, and also because of my mindset, is that there wasn't any other option, right? It wasn't an option to live at home. I've moved on, right? So I didn't have that option. Everyone has their safety net, their backup. Yes, of course, my parents were like, oh, you can come out. No, that's not an option for me. And so I never had that, and I still don't. I don't have that safety net illusion. And when you take off the safety net, all right, then it's all you. It's all on you. And so I started off with an advertising agency making nothing but, I got entertained a lot, let's put it that way. I got a lot of free tickets, okay? And so, and started off with a great group of people in the training program. But I always had an interest in the entertainment industry, even on the advertising side. Then I became a brand manager at a coffee company, Chocolate Nuts Coffee. but in the back of my head, I want the entertainment industry. It's fun, but I love the way of the product, how it connects with audiences. I always say, like, coffee can never make you laugh or cry or feel something like music or a great, a great movie. You know what I mean? And it always fascinated me, and because I'm creative as well, right? But how do I get there, right? And it's not easy to make that transition. It wasn't easy then, and it isn't easy now. All right, for those that are listening or watching, it's never easy, right? It always has its challenges. But for me, and I say this to so many people that many people I know are making career transitions or looking for their first job or want to change it up or all that stuff, right? I'm a voracious reader, as we talked about with books. And so if you want to be in a place, you better know so much information, more information. And so I'm a voracious reader, and so I just consume myself with all the trades, with what's going on. And again, this is before the internet, okay? And so literally, and then I found out who's doing what. Who are the people that I should know? And I cold called people. I sent letters to people. And through a contact, somebody said, and I think it was someone that worked with my wife, and she was in HR, and so I had a contact. And again, contacts are important too. Okay, but you have to do the work, right? And so there was this position at Nickelodeon, which I love. Nickelodeon was one of my favorite jobs, and they were looking for, a head of marketing, for one of their areas, the partnership area. And so I said, this job would be great. Okay, but I knew I was at a disadvantage to the other candidates because I didn't have any entertainment experience at all. I worked in advertising, and I worked, selling coffee. What do you know about, kids' TV programming and shows, et cetera. And so going through that interviewing process, I knew, and I'm probably giving a little career coaching to everybody, so forgive me. I usually charge for this stuff.
I know, I was going to say for free.
Come on.
We'll take it.
But you have to, when you are looking to make professional transitions, you have to create the bridge for others. You can't expect those people on the other side of the desk to make that connection. You have to create that. And so that takes, obviously, time to think about, okay, my experience here, it's relevant because it can bring value over there, right? And I was able, to do that, by power of the brand building. But I knew that, I think I might have, 6 or 7 interviews, it doesn't matter. But I knew that I was still at a disadvantage. So I knew I had to one up the other candidates. I had no idea how many candidates, et cetera. And that's about me, certainly being fearless. And so what I did, and those that are listening and watching, some know this story, I had to break through. So after I thought was my last interview, right, I said, I got to break through. So literally I went to this bakery, and I had an oversized donut made with all the Nickelodeon characters that were on the frosting, and I had it delivered to the offices of Nickelodeon. Well, it just blew them away. Like, what is this? Holy shit. Like, oh my God. And I knew that, I had a breakthrough, but also I knew this was the kind of environment that would appreciate that. And relevancy is important here, and context is important, right? And I knew that they would appreciate it. And I knew that, again, I had to stand out, from the other candidates. And yes, I did get the job, right? And I knew that also, they were looking for someone that was not cookie cutter. They were looking for individuals, or an individual that was different. And I always say to those that say, I need to be this to get that. I need to be this to get it. And I know, people are redoing their resumes based on AI. And all good, but hold on to what makes you unique. And that's part of being a good brand, right? And so that's my story in the entertainment industry. Then, of course, progressed, with more responsibilities on marketing, specifically a lot of partnership marketing, working with a lot of the cable affiliates and wireless and satellite distributors, really about communicating the value of the entertainment brands for distribution, and also doing a lot of work with advertisers, from Viacom, now Paramount, to Disney, ABC. And Disney, ABC was a fascinating position for me, totally different. But that's what I loved about it. It was a position, head of marketing of all Good Morning America, ABC News. And at that point, I was still young, relatively young, right? And what appealed to me about that position was that I was based literally on the newsroom floor. And many times, for those that are in marketing or finance or other different areas of entertainment company, you're usually on a floor, 18 floors up, from actually, as I call it, where the stuff gets made, right? Whether it be a studio set or whether it be a TV set. And so, but I was housed literally right, with the journalists, with the producers, with the writers, et cetera. It was one of the best experiences of my life. Crazy because it's a daily news show, and late breaking news, things happen and you got to be on your toes. But it taught me so much about TV production. It taught me so much about the process, the creative process, how the show gets made, and also I loved working at Disney. It's a great company. I got a lot of great exposure, to a lot of individuals, and that's why, when I advise those that are looking at different career opportunities, especially certain stages of their professional life, I always say, try to start out with a larger organization. And I know it's not always possible, right? But a larger organization does two things. First, it's amazing on your network, forever. Amazing. I mean, I have alums, I have my Disney alums, I have my Sony alums, those that have worked with, that have gone on to other places. It's good for your network, but also it gives you the base of structure of how to do things. And that goes far also even on your resume. When it's, oh, you worked there. Oh, you know how to do certain things. It's a perception thing. So I was very fortunate. It's not easy. I was very fortunate. But it was really, again, I go back to being a savage and a surgeon. I really, was very surgical. I got into more offices than you would ever imagine. Every time I travel, I would travel for my job, but I'm saying, who else is based in LA that I need to talk to? And somehow, unrelated to my job, I'd get into offices or meet, for drinks or coffee, whatever, to certain individuals. And I made that a point throughout my career. I remember I mentioned that part of my brand is being a connector. Well, it holds true, to how I operate.
Yes, I like that, because how many people they want to achieve something, but they never go after it. And all, like you said, however you got in connection with them to have coffee or have a drink, if you wouldn't ever even tried to say, hey, let's get a drink, or send out the message or tried to do it, you would have had the connection or never talked to them. But it's all about doing. You have to do stuff. You can't just sit there in your hotel room while you work for this company and wish maybe you had a bigger dream while you're there, whatever, I don't know. But you can't just sit there and be like, man, I hope whoever walks in this room and we just start talking. You have to go do it. You can't just sit there and expect it to come to you.
There's a saying, the pain of hard work is certainly less than having those regrets. The pain of hard work is less than having regrets. The pain of hard work is less than the feeling of having those regrets, right? And that's part of it. You have to have an action plan. There's no doubt. I've always been, again, I mentioned about visualization. I can visualize how I need to get to somewhere. It might not, and it's never perfect, it's never linear, but I kind of have a visualization that I can see myself there and have kind of a plan. Now, again, never linear, and also be open to pivot. You gotta always be open to pivot. And being in the media and entertainment industry, especially because it's changing so fast, it's a fast-paced industry, that you really have to be able to pivot in order to get those opportunities that can come and can go very quickly. And so I've always been able to do that. And I'm a little bit like a chameleon in very ways. I can be that person if I need to get somewhere. Right, you never lose sight of who your brand is, but you have to be that chameleon sometimes, and so I certainly have served that role sometimes.
Yeah, I also think it falls back to how you say, if you think you're an expert, you won't learn. If you think, oh, I'm too good to be in this role today, but what if that's getting you into a better opportunity? You can't just always think, I'm too good for this today, or I'm too good, like you said, to be a chameleon, you got to try to fit into that, whatever it is, that day or that situation that you're in. Maybe today you're greeting people at the door to a meeting, and you're like, you want to be the one getting greeted. But what if you meet someone shaking their hand? Think about all the opportunities. Now you get to meet every single person that's coming into that room, whatever the instance is, that you might think, I'm better than this, but because you don't think I'm the best one here, all the more opportunities you can get from meeting people, or even, just so many opportunities. Yeah,
I think that, yes. I mean, everyone, no matter where you are, in your professional life, especially obviously early on, you have to be prepared to do the grunt work. And many times it's not the glamorous work, or maybe it's not the work that you envisioned, okay? But I do believe, in incremental steps, right? And the most important part of that is to take advantage of that position and do actually more than not only expect of you, but also, again, be a sponge. Soak up everything in that position. Know more. It's not just a first job or second job, right? And also, again, it's finding out who does what. And again, beginner's mindset. If there's ever an opportunity having that beginner's mindset, have that beginner's mindset, right? And so I advise anyone, yes, you have to take those opportunities. And many times it's not exactly, what you envision. I mentioned the story about, I wanted to get in the entertainment industry. But I started advertising, and just like breaking 3 hours in the marathon, it took me 8 years. I don't know, maybe 8 is my lucky number, but it took me 8 years. All right, and so that's important, to make clear, to people that sometimes it takes time, but it's being persistent and being relentless, and having that vision.
And never giving up.
And never giving up.
Just keep going.
Let's keep going. Can I read my other Tim Grover quotes?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's
go. Okay.
Let's hear these quotes.
So we all mentioned, of course, Winning by Tim Grover. And I do have two other great quotes that I love from the book that I always read all the time. And I certainly read them right before the High Rocks competition. The first one, the battle begins and ends in your own mind. Your thoughts have to be constantly renewed, like a daily subscription that must be paid so you can think clearly. You get updates for your computer and your phone. How often do you update your ideas? Your strategies, your priorities. How often do you reboot your mental energy and delete the outdated programs and file? And this goes, again, back to that beginner's mindset. It's back to being fearless. It's back to you getting out of that pattern, and disrupt yourself. And so that passage always, resonates with me because it is about change. And so, again, that always strikes a chord with me. The other one, that I really love from Winning by Tim Grover, is deep inside you, there's an undeniable force driving your actions, the part of you that refuses to be ordinary. The piece that stays raw and untamed. Not just instinct, but killer instinct. The kind you keep in the dark, where you crave things and don't talk about. And you don't care how it comes across to others. Because you know this is who you are, and you wouldn't change it if you could. Your dark side is your fuel, your energy. It excites you, keeps you on edge, recharges you, fills your tank. It's an addiction, as powerful as your addiction to success. I love this quote. That quote is amazing. Again, it's about getting into sometimes the pain cave, the dark places. Getting into your head, all those things, and sometimes it's not pleasant. So those are some of my
yes.
favorite.
Let's talk about the pain cave just a little bit. Something it's enjoyable to be there, but it also sucks at the same time. But for example, the marathon that we did in Pittsburgh.
Congratulations, buddy! Amazing time.
Thank you.
Isaac did 3:30.
Yeah,
which is amazing. His first marathon.
Yeah. So.
But how did you feel the day after? You remember we had that conversation?
Yeah, I definitely didn't feel fulfilled. Okay.
Haley, how did he feel after? Barely walking.
Oh, the worst part was the Airbnb we were staying at was a 2-story.
Oh God.
Where the bedrooms were. And when I say stairs, they weren't like a nice incline. They were.
Oh.
I had to walk backwards down the stairs because every time I would step, my knees just like wanted to give out, or my legs wanted to give out.
Quads.
Yeah, and I'm like the night before, I'm like, guys, this was a bad idea. Like these stairs are going to be horrible tomorrow. But I made it down without falling. But anyways,
you thought Haley had to carry your on her shoulders down.
That is what,
Try that, right?
That is what happened. I rolled down the stairs. But so that last, and you talked about it, I think 3 or 4 days before, like you're going to get to that point at some point in the race where you've done the training, like you're prepared, but now it's your mind. Like, are you going to like keep going or give up? And it was definitely like mile 21 to 23, 24. And I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. And so I was like, I'm ready for it, but I didn't know what it was going to be like when I was in it. And I ran with one of my best friends. He was running, I want to say 340 with the pace around 340, I believe. So he got to that same part around 2021 and hit a wall. And at the end, he was like, oh, there must be something different about you. Or, you know what I mean? A lot of people say, oh, you must be just different. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, I just know how to get through those times. Like, those are the times where you're either going to let your mind win or like how your body feels, or you're going to win this battle. Like, you understand what it's like to be in that, but and to me, it's like crazy because I'm talking to myself, like telling myself, like, you're strong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like David Goggins out there yelling at myself. And if someone
we all feel like David Goggins, we just can't help ourselves.
Yeah. If you were like in my brain, because obviously I'm not saying it out loud. I did say it out loud like if I'm by myself, I will start like talking to myself. But if you were like in my brain, you'd be like, oh, this guy's crazy. But like that's how I get through those parts because. Like, again, you've been there. Anyone who's been in that part where it's like you're grinding and then once you get through it, you're like, you're there, you feel great again, everything's going good. But that's where he hit the wall and he just went downhill. And maybe, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't know how to work through the pain cave, but like, if you don't know how to, like, you have to put yourself in those situations sometimes. And like you said, the whole reason, like I can remember when I was training for the triathlon and you told me go out there and run for 2 hours. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I do not want to go out there for 2 hours and run. Right. But like you told me you have to be prepared for when you're doing this triathlon, what it's gonna feel like how are you gonna deal with it? And you just constantly need to get, like, I'm not saying every single day go out there and do that. If you are, there's one probably person that doesn't. It's probably David Goggins. But you don't need it every single day. There's gonna be little parts throughout the day, like working out. If you got to do a heavy set, you're gonna be like in that small little mindset maybe for a few sets. But like you said, I mean, you know better than I do, but for running sucks. You might not think it, but running sucks.
No, at times it does
suck.
Yeah,
like it is one of those things.
Yeah.
it's constant. If you want to keep going, you can't stop, and it does suck. And now it's fulfilling afterwards, and it's a lot, I believe, more mental sometimes than it is actually physical.
100%.
And even just to go out there, put the shoes on and get moving, especially like we live in the up north. So in the winter times, it's even harder. Now it's cold. Now you got to layer up.
Freeze your ass off.
Yes.
Be prepared. Right?
Yes. But the pain cave is one of those things that I think everyone needs to experience.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
It's hard to describe to others that have never experienced or been there, right? And top athletes have. We all know that, right? But we all know that the general population, that's 1%, of the general population that has been in the pain cave, right? And it's not pleasant, right? The pain cave starts with prep, with the training, creating the experience that you're going to face on race day. And it is about the mental part of it, right? But the pain cave can apply to non-physical things as well. It's about getting ready for that presentation, that you might have to draw on a number of different things. And, oh my God, this is long, and I got to do this. Well, you're actually getting into a type of pain cave where you're uncomfortable. It's hard, all that stuff. Now, certainly being athletes like we are, right, that 1%, right, we know how it feels, all right? And so it provides me certainly the fuel, to go on. And it is not pleasant. I remember when I started, we mentioned about, me starting back up competitive running, at this stage in my life, I call it the fourth chapter, right? High school, college, post-college, and now, right, in DC. And I remember when I started to train, and I might have had a race and planned a 10K maybe 4 months, 5 months later, right? And I remember I'm on the track. It is cold. It's dark in the morning, and I have to do interval work, mile repeats, whatever. And I remember I'm stretching, and I'm crying. I'm crying because I know what I have to do to get into there. I'm crying because, it's like, what is my life like? I'm crying so many emotional things because, again, it's the mental part of it. And you have to feel it. And again, like we mentioned about the experience being at the hotel, it's those moments that and was it like a milestone like anyone's, chart? No, it's so typical and ordinary and all this stuff. But I'll never forget that. And when I started training again, it was so lonely and cold, and I started crying.
Yes.
Because I knew I had to.
And how many people, I'm sure, come up to you and they're like, Bob, I wish I was as fast as you, or how do you do it? And it's like, it's those lonely days. It's those days where no one's watching, that you're putting in the work. Yeah. And it's like over and over and over. And one thing that's nice about fitness in some aspects is, if you go and you put in the work, you're going to perform well. Sometimes you don't always perform as good as you think you're going to. And to me, it's like, okay, so let's say like dieting or fat loss or trying to get stronger in the gym. The equation to getting there is pretty easy. You just need to show up every day, work hard, put in the work. But so many people cannot show up consistently, cannot put in the work, and then they want to know like why they can't achieve what they're trying to achieve. Right. And to me, it is simple. It's simple because it's like, we're not trying to figure out how to dissect or do a brain surgery on someone where it takes years of learning and then doing it, or like trying to get the Mars. Like, this is pretty easy. Like, show up, be consistent. Yes, it's going to suck. Yes, it's sometimes hard to be consistent, but then I also want to dive in like your lifestyle in New York, having a kid, training, business, all that, because like that's a lot going on, and some people can't handle all that.
Well, it's probably most can't. I mean, it's just I should say this: most won't sign up for that, right? But going back to one of my other favorite books is Atomic Habits by James Clear, right? And he says, right, that it's great having goals. So let's stay with running, right? My goal is to complete my first marathon. All good. You've stated, you're journaling, all that stuff, right? And then the second stage is having systems in place. Okay, I'm going to lay out my clothes, the night before. I have this, I know where I'm going, all those systems, right? But the holy grail in all of this is identity. It's, I am a marathon runner. This is who I am. So whether it be a shitty morning that's cold and dark, this is who I am. And it's really getting to that point of identity. Many don't get there, and it's all good. But I believe in order to, even professionally, right? It's the identity. This is who I am. When you have identity, it keeps yourself honest. There's no one looking. Even like how I train now. Do you think anybody's got my reps? Like, no.
Yeah.
But I know that I didn't do enough reps, or I on the positive side, I know, I added weight. This is really good. Yesterday at the track, I was doing a circuit, a mile repeats, bleacher runs, lunges, side bend. Anyhow, so I got to my third set, and it was my best time, right? It was myself. I was with no one. And I yelled out, yes, you got under 14 minutes at certain times, right? But I think that's, part of it is it's the identity part, that you mentioned. But going back to apply it to business, right? I think it's so much about, the 5 C's, okay? It starts out with first clarity, all right? Clarity, knowing where you're going, having clear, and for business, having that North Star, right? You mentioned consistency. Consistency is so important. To over and over be consistent, with, what you set out to do, or the processes, right? The third C of the 5 C's is creativity. Now, I don't necessarily mean like, hey, I can paint a picture or I can make video, but it's creativity to problem solve. Creativity to see things around walls or corners, that others are not ready to see, right? The other thing is communication. That's the 4th C. Communication is so important, when you set out to do something, communicate it, right? And then in business, collaboration. Because even if it's a solo sport, or your own executive manager, collaboration is very, very important. You always need that support, etc. So to going back to your point, I think that there's consistency is important, but I'll add those 4 other C's.
Yes, and back to if you do have trouble with being consistent, like you said, build a tribe, build people there that are accountability partners. Like, if you send me a workout and you're like, send me your time splits, you have to do it. You can't just make up time splits and send it to him. Like, if you do have trouble with that.
You went faster on those mile repeats than I ever thought that you would.
Yeah.
Holy shit. You did 6:10. I mean, oh shit. I think I gave you start out with 8-minute miles.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
yeah.
So you didn't follow the rules.
No. Well, it's so hard with running. I just want to keep trying to do better each interval. But so if you do have trouble with being or doing things, find a partner or find someone who you can keep you accountable if you do have that problem. And at the end of the day, it's like there's definitely going to be days where you guys want to fight each other because even Gavin, for example, I'll get on him if he doesn't run or if he's not going to the gym. And then sometimes I do think okay, maybe I'm being too hard, but I want the same thing back to me. If I'm being lazy, if I'm not doing it, say it, because you need, like you said, the tribe. Build those people around you. There's a reason why back in the times, Indians that had tribes, there's a reason they had tribes, because you physically couldn't go out by yourself, kill animals, whatever they had to do. You needed people to help you get to, back then, basically, I guess, stay alive, keep warm. Same with now. If you want to get better, build a tribe, build people who are constantly pushing you, better than you, and that'll obviously help you.
If I just want to add, before building a tribe, you have to find a tribe. And I know, it's not easy. When I moved out from New York City down here, I had no one. I mean, I knew a few people, obviously the people that I worked with, but again, as a full-fledged adult kid, not in a school system, all that stuff, you're flying without a net. So you have to actually find a tribe. And it's not easy sometimes, many times. And I was very fortunate, in my training to have these amazing, beast brothers. And yeah, we push each other. I mean, we're intense. It's not for everyone, right? And we always we have a running joke going that when we do circuits and this is out on the track, we do a lot of plyometrics, pull-ups, a little bit of running, so forth, and jumping. And we said, okay, we're gonna do 3 sets, right? And of course, the running joke is, and I started and say, okay, once you get to 3, no, we're gonna do 1 more.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a mental thing. It's like you get through, focus on what you're doing right at that moment. That's about being present. That's about counting the rep. Don't think about the next set. And we all know that we sometimes can get into that habit. Okay, I got to do this in the gym next. I got to do lat pull down. I got to move and no, stop. Finish what you're doing right now. Think about what you're doing right now. And I think that that's part of it too. But yeah, surround yourself with people that make you better. And I'm very fortunate to have my brothers that do that. We do that for each other.
Yes, yeah, especially with running. And
in the gym too.
Yeah.
Although I train mostly solo, but I made a lot of new friends at the gym, and I work out with some of my other buddies too. So
yeah, but when I looked and saw I have like a 20-mile run, I'm like 20 miles, and I start looking how far out that is, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But yeah, you just got to focus.
It's the next county, isn't it, Isaac? Yeah, probably literally. Yes.
Yeah, pretty close to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to focus. Again, like you said. Try to make it more simple. Put the shoes on. Run the first mile. Focus, like you say. Focus on your form. Focus on your breathing. And then just keep doing that for every step, every mile. Next thing you know, you're back home. 20 miles is done. Don't overlook it, because when you do that, it looks – sometimes it's a lot to say, wow, I'm going to do that. Especially like the Ironman, swimming a mile. I couldn't even swim 50 meters when I started. And I'm like, I have to swim a mile. And like you said – when we pulled into the bay in Maryland for the Ironman, and we're driving across the bridge, and we look over, and we see like these Deweys or whatever those floaty things are, and I think it's Haley and another friend. They were like, "Oh, that's where we're going to be swimming tomorrow," and I'm like, "There's no way." There's no way we're swimming it. Like
you're seeing the water counts.
Yes,
the waves.
yes, yeah, and like how far it is.
Yeah,
and I'm like, you gotta be like, there's no way. That's it. Sure enough, we go check in. That's where we're swimming, and obviously it turned out well. But yeah, but if I would have showed up to the Ironman with no training, nothing.
But part of it too, and again, those that are listening or watching, they'll say, "I'm not doing a triathlon. I'm not built for that, or I'm not doing a marathon." And that's all good. But what it's really about is starting something. Start, right? And I'll say this, that, in the morning, if I'm doing a 5-miler, the first mile usually sucks. It usually sucks. Or it's usually like, you're tired, or, and in the gym, same thing. I mean, I hate my first sets. It's like, oh shit. But once you get going, right, you get into the room, you're warmed up, it gets better. And I think those, people have to understand that. Just start. And it does get better. But many don't get to that starting line, but it does get better. I can say that from lifting, I can say that from running. But yeah, the start can be rough.
Yes. Just do it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah.
But I'll speak for myself. Is like whether I'm running or whether I'm gym, and always there's the back of my mind. Well, just stop and leave. But I'm like, I'm not stopping and leaving. You always have the back. I can just stop. I can just go home.
Yes.
No, you go on.
Yes. And how yeah. And I feel like people who look at like us, they're like, oh, they must have different mindsets. It's like, no, I probably have just as many doubts or ideas about I want to skip this workout or this training session as you do, but I just don't do that. Like, how many times is it, like, especially if you're traveling, because you travel a lot, to get in and do a workout or get a run in, it's like, it'd be like, oh, well, I'm traveling. Well, if you use the excuse, oh, I'm traveling, I'm not working out or running, you would never work out or run.
There's always distractions.
And excuses.
Personally, for me, it's part of who I am and my journey, whether that be making my way to Australia, making my way to New York City, getting that first job, then moving into entertainment media. We talked about, the challenge and difficulties, starting my own, moving to DC, starting my own consulting firm. All those things are consistent for me with the way I train and my outlook. And so I think that, to advise people, so yes, it's about, getting that first mile in maybe, or getting that first set in, but it's in other things in your life. Start.
So let's dive a little bit.
Can I stand up, by the way?
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks. Excuse me.
You gonna go run? So what we would do on those long runs is do so many miles on the track and then run out a few miles and then come back. And it's going to be the same way. So I think as of now, I'm going to try to do a last man standing race next year. So
really?
Yeah. So
holy shit, in Texas?
Yes. So
oh shit.
Yeah. So if you're down, Bob, we can do it.
Oh shit, I saw the video. Oh shit. Oh
yeah.
My God, I know.
Yeah. So
oh shit. Well, if I remember correctly, this year, because of the weather,
yes,
they had a tie.
Yes.
With those two, I forgot the two.
Yeah, I don't remember the names either. But at like 200 some miles.
Fuck, you're doing that?
Yeah. Well, so the plan is to do it. My goal is I'd like to at least get to 100 miles. So you have to run 24 hours straight to get to 100 miles. And when I say 24 hours straight, it's only, I say only. Do you know who Lucy Davis is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. She's a beast.
And one of the top high rocks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she only got to 74 miles. So, like you said, when you start seeing these people run the high rocks, it's the same concept. So when I started watching these videos of people that are like these elite athletes, and they're only getting to 74, I'm like, okay, this might be a lot. So it's simple. It sounds simple. 4.2 miles every hour. Obviously, it adds up.
Sorry, we're riffing on geeking on this.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. What kind of loop is it? Is it all trails? Is it uphill, downhill? Is it flat? What do you know about the actual loop?
So I would like to do the BPN one that just happened. They don't have their date out yet, but from what I understood, it's basically a decently level trail, and it was like dirt.
For last man standing.
Dirt, yeah. There's another one also in Texas that this is the one that said there's a date, so that's the one I'll train for with the date, because we plan on getting married in July. So
wow.
So it has to be.
Of course.
It has to be before July.
Obviously.
And
by the way, you can't get hurt though, like a week before the wedding.
I think it'll be all right.
Okay.
As long as I can be there, I'll be all right.
Give at least yourself a couple weeks.
Yeah. So that's the one on the date, like I'll prep for, and then if they launch, because you have to bid into it, and then you're not even guaranteed to get into it. But the other one is different. So during the day, it's the same trail. During night, they switch it up and the terrain changes. So, and that one seemed maybe a little more difficult, but I don't know. It's like, it's one of those things, you always got to try harder things and keep going.
It's consistent with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It is so consistent. So I want to loop back on a couple of things. We mentioned about my consulting company, Mutual Partnership Alliances. And, look, of course, I focus on business to business, content strategy and planning for a wide range of different kinds of clients, Fortune 500 companies, tech, pretty much in the SaaS, area, associations, higher ed. I do some work, ed tech. So it's a wide range of clients. And you know what? Certainly with my background, I deliver on everything from partnerships, again, also obviously content strategy, planning, but I boil it down to two things that I provide to my clients. I fill gaps that they have, right? And I'm able to connect disparate dots that others have overlooked or deemed inconsequential. And it's really boiled down, and I think that's so important when you not only look at your brand, but you look at your value prop. To really boil it down, too many times companies, whether they're independent consultants or companies, it's like, oh, we can do these 22 things. Really? Can you do all 22 well? And what kind of experience do you have? And so a lot of times there's people that throw in the kitchen sink, right? And it's like, exactly what do you do? Now, I understand people say, oh, I don't want to limit myself. But you know what? Less is more sometimes, right? Do a few things better. And I think that's really important when you look at your company. And also it's about quality. Quality of work, quality of relationships. I think that's really important as well, when you run your own company. That's really important.
Yeah, Alex Hormozy's big on, if you do like 3-4 different things, dive in on what you do best, that one thing, and that time that you're spending on these other things that, could be side hustles or things that you're not as good at. And he's like, dive into that one thing, and
yes.
You will, if you make that better, figure out like 2 things that you're doing in that one thing that's making the money that you need to do that you're not doing because you're too busy doing this and that, and dive into it. And because so Tyler owns a restaurant in where we live, and he's also the one that did the marathon. He's like my best friend.
Right.
That's like kind of where he's at right now, trying to figure out, because he does Airbnbs. What else does he do? Airbnb. Oh, catering. And now catering's a little, kind of in the restaurant, it's the same thing. But he's kind of like, they have a good successful business, but he's kind of in the stage where, should I get rid of those Airbnbs and like focus on this to make it bigger? But then it's like, okay, well, he's kind of satisfied where he's at with the numbers. It's like, does he want to put in that time? Because obviously to make something bigger, grow it.
Sure.
He's got kids. It's kind of just like in that weird space trying to figure that part out. So maybe he needs to get in contact with Bob or Mitchell Alliance.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Have them call me or text me.
Yeah.
Or I'll give you my email address. But I think that, it's always a challenge for everyone. And it all depends on where they are professionally and in their life stage. Look, there are many individuals, that don't have a choice, right? They need a second or a third income. They rely on that side hustle. Let's call it what it is.
Yep.
It's expensive to live day in and day out, right? Yep. So they don't have. So that's almost our conversation. It's almost a luxury. To say, okay, maybe I'm not going to do that, a little that. You know what I mean? So let's yes. call that out straight, right? But there's a good book that I just read. I highly recommend it. And a good friend of mine gave it to me. It's called Essentialism by Greg McEwen. And Greg is all over, social media as well. And that's what it's about. It's about essentialism is really identifying those things that are essential and prioritize them. So he goes through that, his outlook on life and also exercises. He divides it up literally into essential and non-essentials. And of course, the non-essentials is about doing too many things. You're distracted. You don't have a focus. All those things. And I hate to say it, but a good majority of the people are non-essentials. They just are. I think that. There's a lot of people that do, quote unquote, all the busy work. But being busy is not necessarily being an essentialist. Because I'm busy okay, you're busy, but exactly, not only what are you doing, but what kind of impact are you making, right? And so too many times, it's like, and even in companies, people doing this, okay, why are they doing that? And I think that's why I highly recommend Essentialism, because it gets down to it. And sometimes though, for individuals, and I get it, and the author, Greg McEwen, says this, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and we all fall off that wagon and go back to it. But I think also you have to be honest with yourself too. What is essential, right? And I remember going back, when you answer that question, what is essential, it goes back to also core values and who you are, right, professionally and personally. And I remember, no names, at a recent company, that I mentioned about creating a website, a new website, and redesign, and and a considerable investment for a rather small size company, right? And so I remember again getting a small group of people, including the CEO, right, around the table. And so the agency, good credentials, they kicked it off, okay, asking the CEO a question, saying, what is the company about? Who are you? And this particular individual started shaking and crying, I thought. And it was so uncomfortable for me. I wanted just to wilt and go under the table, shrink myself. He couldn't answer that question. What are you and who are you? It got so much into, a lot of companies do this, but the busy thing, the functions, right? The functions, the tactics. Oh, we do this, this is what we do, blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't get really to the core of who you are. It goes back to, we talked about, personal branding. Who are you? And so even when someone asks me that question, I don't go full out with anymore. I used to. Yeah, I'm a principal founder of Mitchell Partnership Alliances. We do B2B content strategy planning. I go back to, I'm a connector, I'm a disruptor, I'm a missionary, because that's who you are, right? And what I do, I fill gaps and connect disparate dots that others have overlooked or deemed inconsequential. Boil it down, but a lot of times, individuals, whether it be CEOs or other managers, they have a hard time doing that. A, because they haven't spent a lot of time just stepping back and being in that white space. And that's what essentialism is just getting rid of all that stuff, right? But like anything, Isaac, like we talked about working out, it's hard work. It's hard work, and sometimes painful, because you see this, especially with I joke, because there is what they call an entrepreneur/founder syndrome. It actually is a term. In this case, it was very relevant, where you don't know what you don't know, and it's personal, right? And not taking you have to do. You pay the bills, keep the lights on, but you don't take the necessary step back. This is not about going on vacation. This is about doing the tough soul searching. This is about going to the pain cave, a different way, not physical, and saying, who are we? Right? Where do we need to go? And I'm just not talking, yes, it's great, we're going to double our revenue and our profitability, and all good. But who are you? Where you want to go? And those are the tough questions. I find that a lot of organizations can't go there, and I help clients with that. I always say to a number of people that obviously I have a certain specialty, my core competencies we talked about, right? But I also do a lot of executive coaching. And I say that informally. I have no those big certificates that people put up on LinkedIn, okay. Because a lot of executive coaching is just common sense and experience. And we're going to get into storytelling, because I know that we want to talk about storytelling. But it is, right? And executive coaching, a lot of times, if I mention that I'm a transformation agent, that's what people bring me on board. And I always joke, I say with transformation agent, is that I'm not so much into, as a consultant, rearranging the furniture in the same room. I'm more about recreating the room. And I always say that. I lean more to the latter, recreating the room. And I always also ingest say, if somebody pays me a lot of money and they want me to rearrange the furniture in the same room, and maybe I'll paint the wall a different color, okay, I'll take on the client. But I'm much more into and that's just my style, who I am. I mean, and that's, again, where the higher, I believe, especially with AI, where the higher value add is to those that can, again, create that new space, but more are in the former, of rearranging the furniture in the same room. We talked about the fear and the safety, right? And being that custodian, I call them, of the status quo. Just being a custodian, a caretaker. I'm not so much into that, as far as, in the professional role that I play. I mean, and so going back to executive coaching, right? Being a transformation agent and helping organizations grow and deliver business outcomes. A lot of it is that many times leaders, and this could be large companies, mid-sized, small companies, there's they're focused first on the day-to-day, but they have a lot of management challenges and issues and that they have to deal with it. And so a lot of times with the executive coaching role is to help them put in place a transformation plan. And I'm not talking about like completely ripping up the organization. Sometimes it's needed for certain organizations. But it's more about setting the organization on a path, on a journey for growth. And many times with large organizations, you got to sell in these ideas, right? And so a lot of times there'll be clients come to me and say, Bob, tell me, what do you think about this? And also when you bring in an outsider or a consultant, a lot of times you'll have C-suite executives confide in you. They'll tell you personnel issues like, oh, this person is really not working, not carrying their weight. What do you think I should do, et cetera? And so you are that ear, a trusted ear, a confidant. And I really value that role as well in my perspective, and especially and they appreciate certainly my style in providing that value. So, but going back to, we talked about sometimes, why organizations, are afraid, right? Not going after the more ambitious, goals. And a lot of times in organizations, there is a lot of confirmation bias, I call that. And that's about people being in the same room and doing that groupthink thing. Say that fast 5 times. And it's like, oh, great, yes. Okay, yeah. Oh, somebody says, okay, they move over here. Oh, somebody said, oh, we'll move over here. Oh, somebody said this yesterday, I'm good. And all of a sudden, they lose any kind of clarity because they're so concerned with everybody's the self-preservation, and they're like, who are you? You got to believe in what those things that drive the organization. Be really honest, but a lot of times organizations don't. So the role that I provide is I actually help organizations rethink their assumptions. And rethink your assumption is getting away from confirmation bias. I do a lot of that, certainly in the event space. When COVID hit, and this is conferences and trade shows, when COVID hit, obviously, all those trade shows and conferences were closed immediately, right? And coming from TV and digital, right, I brought to the industry a real, content and media lens to the transformation events, even prior to COVID, into more digital experiences or reformatted in-person experiences, not doing the same old, right? Rethink your assumptions. So of course, no events happen, all right? And guess what? Okay, no, as I say in the industry, like no more 4 walls, right? No more about the travel destination. No more about, ordering chicken and name tags and flowers. Okay, all necessary. But it was more about the content, and the content looking a lot more like TV and digital. So when that shifted, that period shifted, there were so many professionals that, of course, trying to upskill, and everyone had to scramble, no doubt. But here lies where it's more about much more about learning new skills, which is still important. It's about having that mindset to rethink what's important. And so I always say with COVID was actually very good for my business. I always say, look, don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? And it was really good for my business. It actually created, I became global because what COVID did was it opened up the aperture for companies around the world to look for talent wherever they are. Wherever they didn't need to, it couldn't rely on somebody, down the block, right? Or even before, many large companies had regional offices. It wasn't nothing new, but they usually look for talent within those regions. But now, I was being contacted from companies around the world, really, based on my expertise and what I published, the content I published for myself. But also we talked about the uniqueness of my voice and how I saw the events industry really coming from TV and digital. And again, no fault for these particular professionals, but if you're doing consistently what you're doing all the time, you have no muscle memory at all for doing anything different, right? And so there lies where the value that I provide is force organizations or encourage organizations to rethink their assumptions and look at things differently, and so that's one of the values that certainly I provide organizations.
So, what role does storytelling play in the emotional connection with an audience?
It's critical. It's really critical because storytelling, and again, coming from a content background, right, in TV and media, that's the business. It is about storytelling. Okay, and I always say storytelling, whether it is a TV show, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a blog, whether it's a speaker at a live event, it's all storytelling. So it is about, we talked about this I think a little earlier, being format agnostic. Whether audio, whether live, whether video, whether being format agnostic, right, and platform agnostic. Because storytelling lives in all those formats, right? On all those platforms. And even it's more exciting than ever now because there's so many and it's so fragmented. So professionally, it's so important. And Isaac, you did a great job with your business, understanding about video, understanding about placement, understanding your audience. I'm giving you a compliment.
I appreciate it.
But it's true. And I mentioned the importance of storytelling is know your audience, right? Or audiences, your target audiences, and it could be certainly plural, right? Because your story, although consistent, I've told you earlier for the last couple of hours, many different stories, but I'll probably maybe edit a little bit of story for a certain audience or add another thing to another audience. So it's knowing your audiences, but storytelling is the most impactful. But in order for it to be impactful as an audience experience, it has to be authentic, right? You have to feel it as someone who delivers that story. And because in order for the audience to appreciate this, right, that's your story, they have to connect with it and almost say, oh, wow, I can identify with that, or God, that happened to me before, or just, again, there needs to be some kind of identification, or enlightenment, inspiration. Those are all outcomes that you want from your storytelling. And by the way, from a business standpoint, it's selling and marketing, right? That's the most impactful way, and again, there's so many things out there, and it's so exciting about how, the barrier to entry now, creating content is so low. It's exciting. So, storytelling is coming from so many different places, so many different sources, et cetera. There's no longer the institutions, the media institutions, right? And then there's the delivery mechanisms, right? And it's accelerated, it's fast, it's just a great time, right? But you just can't say, oh, hey, there's so many different outlets and I can create, hours upon hours upon hours of content. Well, okay, that's great. But what do you want to say? And by the way, AI can't help you with that. What do you want to say? Who are you? That's before any storytelling, right? That's so important in creating content, strategy. But who are you? What do you want to say? What are your messaging points, right? That is so critical in any story. So then you can decide, oh, okay, we're going to need these hours of content and whether it be video, audio, text, blogs, etc. And then you map it out in regards to platforms. That's what I help clients do, right? And then you bring in partners. Partners, whether it be sponsors or whether it be other media partners, because it's not just good to have a story, right? Well, you can have a story, but if no one hears about it, I always say it's like a mouse with a megaphone. Right?
Yeah.
And you need to find your audience. So, but storytelling is so important in the connection to your audience.
Yeah, I've heard before. It could be a little off, but it's like don't sell the product or the item, sell a story, because it's going to be easier to sell someone that product in the story than it would be just to be like, you need this pen, for example, or a house. Like don't sell a dream in the story that involves the house. But don't just be focused on the house. That's or whatever you're selling.
Well, the house are like, I go back to, I mentioned earlier about the CEO. So many times the default for so many people is I call it the form and function. The form and function are the tactics, the functions, the things, the plumbing, okay? Necessary in many cases, all right? But then when you get into the storytelling, when you get into who you are and what you believe in, they're kind of lost in that, And by the way, then there's the other extreme of those that are great storytellers, right? But they have a blurry message. They don't understand, maybe there's a disconnect with their audience. And it's never perfect. And they don't have the form and the function and the tactical and the technical, expertise. So you have to have both, right? But it all comes down to authenticity. I'll tell you a professional story from many years ago. I mentioned that I was head of marketing for Good Morning America on ABC News, part of Disney. And it was a situation that I mentioned I love the job. It was chaotic and crazy being on a live news floor. But I remember the situation where I think it was the second day into my job, and the head of news at that time brought me into the office. He hired me. And again, I came from kids programming, so I had to sell myself to get that job too, by the way. And he basically said, Bob, I'm going to tell you something that just stays between the two of us or a small group of people. We're going to get rid of one of the co-anchors, okay? High-profile co-anchor, beloved by so many people, so forth, right? National show. But I want you to still keep on doing the job that you're doing. And that's extremely hard because co-anchors is a news show. They're part of your brand. They're a huge part. Your brand is, I always call the overcoat that goes on top of your co-anchors or even influencers or sports stars even. Okay, so, but anyhow, in this case, it was news co-anchor. So talking about tricky, day one. And I always say this to individuals that go into a new job, guess what? That job description is only 50% of the job. It's only 50% of the job, all right? And by the way, if it was 100% of the job, you wouldn't take the job. But the other thing is that the ground underneath you is always moving. It's constantly moving. So in this case, it was literally moving, right? And so I remember going back, I'm going back to that, it's about storytelling. So when shit hit the fan and it got into the news, obviously this person was leaving and I was the unofficial, I guess it was official spokesperson, being marketing, to go across the country. I think it was certainly New York, Dallas, Chicago, in the major cities. A meeting, I mentioned I did a lot of work with partners, affiliate partners at the time. Actually letting them know, or actually they've already know through the press, but again, mention that we're all good. is all going according to plan, but of course we don't have a replacement. Now, of course, anything that is not spelled out to any kind of business partner always brings up a lot of questions, right? And I knew that at that point that the show was in a distant number 2 behind the Today Show in rating, distant. And that was part of the shakeup, right? So I knew that there was a potential of going to the audiences and there might be, 500 to 1,000 people, all depends on each location. And I had to tell them, they knew the news, but I had to tell them, oh, we're all good here, and these TV affiliates, they're your partners. That's how you, in the broadcast TV world, linear TV, that's how they get the signal to watch your show, right? And so they are your partners, they're business partners, right? And I remembered, I said, okay, I can do the tried and true PowerPoint presentation and all that stuff. And I was with other individuals from other parts of the company. And I'm a young executive. I had to be maybe 3 months into this, right? And so I had no personal relationships with these individuals, being so new, right? Of course, I built them, as I moved on the company. And so I said, okay, what can I do? What can I do? Because they're and it could be a potential hostile environment, right? Oh, what are you doing? What are you guys doing? What are you crazy? Blah, blah, blah. And so I knew going in that I had to disarm them, okay? And whenever you go in a situation like that, it's always great experience, okay? But it's never easy. So what I did was I said, forget about the typical PowerPoint. And so I had a creative idea, okay? Kind of out there. I said, okay, we're going to create a video, okay? Working with my creative services team. And we're going to role play, right? I'm actually going to play a hotel bellhop, literally, serving breakfast because it was a morning show, okay? And there's the bowl of oatmeal, there's the toast, there's the coffee. And in each of those areas, I know you got to visualize this, but that's how I do. I sell stories, right? That in each of those different areas, they illustrated was through obviously graphics, right? In the bowl was, hey, we're going to give you customized promos. In the oatmeal bowl, in the coffee cup, it was going to be, we're going to do in-market visits for the anchors, and in here we're going to do prizes and promotions in literally on a tray, and I'm dressed up. I'm literally dressed up as a hotel bellhop delivering the breakfast to this CEO, and again, fictitious, someone you can see in bed nonetheless, okay? This is your breakfast. These are all the things going on, all that stuff. So out there, and again, I'm fearless, right? But I knew I had to do something different. Well, of course, it went on and it was hysterical. Everyone started laughing. Oh my God, unexpected. And it was my way of literally going into the new news, right? That we were changing co-anchors. But I had to present it in a way that these are the value add in a totally different kind of way. Yes, it was out there. Yes, I dressed up. But here I am in person. And that was my story, So yes, it's the story, but it's also the context and how you do it. So again, we talk about things you remember. I would never forget that. And I had to do that 5 times.
Yeah.
It was all on video. And I remember somebody laughed at the audience, an executive from a big station group. He said, so put on the outfit.
Yeah, you should have showed up in the outfit.
I didn't have the outfit. I'm in a typical suit. I'm so sorry I donated the outfit. But anyhow. Yeah.
So you were saying you want to swing back around. Did we touch on everything so far that you want to swing back on?
I think so. The one thing that going back to, we touched upon so many things. It's like, I'm into horoscopes, but not like my day, But I'm a Capricorn.
Okay.
Right, and it's interesting. We all. What are you? What's your sign? Do you know?
No.
Oh.
I'm not into that stuff.
Dude, you're December.
November
30th.
What am I? 13th. A what? Scorpio.
Are you Scorpio? Okay. Yes, Scorpio. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. anyhow, it's very interesting. And again, I'm not following it, but anyhow, so I'm bringing this up because I'm a Capricorn. You know, my birthday is January 5th, right? And so there's this great book. It's just a great book. You know, it's called The Secret Life of Birthdays, right? And it's every day, just, you know, goes into, you know, when you're born on this date. And is it 100% accurate? Of course not, right? But for me, obviously, it's probably maybe 80%, 85%. You read through it and all this stuff. And so I was born, and each day is titled, you know. So I was born on the day of recovery. And it's so appropriate for me because it's who I am. You know, if I have a failure, okay, or there's a hardship, I'm like, I dust myself off and I move on. And it's so appropriate that's what recovery is about, right? It's not staying in the past, right? It's finding a way out. And so I mention this because it circles back, you know, to the conversations we're having. It's that, yeah, I'm born on the day of recovery, and it's part of my journey, and we all should, you know, recover no matter what situation you're in, because there's always a better place, there's always a better opportunity, and I always say this, and my friends know this, I always say, settle for more.
I like it. Why not? Settle for more. So what's next? Personal, professional, what's next for you?
God, you know what? It's such an interesting question, because I'm very much, you know, into being present, you know, and I'm big on that, being present, and not projecting too far, you know, into the future, and just, you know, thanking, you know, God and that I'm here today. You know, every day is a gift. I always say you're not promised tomorrow. And so I'm always focused on, you know, being present at the present time. Of course, I think, God, what is it going to look like? Mm-hmm. But I go back to not the form and the function, or what the title's going to be, or who my clients are going to be, or where, you know, we might live next, and there'll be live next. It's more about, what do I want to focus on? Okay, in that growth. And I answer it with self-actualization, working on myself, you know, making me a better person today than yesterday. And it's also fulfilling my purpose, to inspire others to have the courage to be more than they thought they could be. And that's how I look at the future. I don't look at it like, you know, buying things. Yes, we have a great trip coming up to Europe, you know, my wife and around the house, all good, looking forward to it. But I don't hang myself on to those things. I work on myself. I get energized, you know, by relationships, friends and family, you know, experiences. You know, one thing also is I mentioned that, you know, I'm a seeker. And so for me, that's where the enjoyment is. Like, I don't know what's next, actually, because I want to discover more. I'm not afraid to be lost. You know, they always say, you know, in order to be found, you need to be lost, right?
Yes.
I'm not afraid to be lost. I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It makes a lot of people that are closer to my age uncomfortable. I still love that place. It's all good, because that's the place where I thrive. So to answer your question, I'm lost. No, but I think you get the point.
Yes. No. And where can people find you?
Okay. So of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Okay. So are you gonna post links into the video or to the copy?
Yep.
Please do.
Yep.
Links. I'm on X. BMitch1234. Of course, I'm on Instagram. Bob Mitchell 4646. Those are the three best places to connect with me, and you'll see all my content. Also, please read the blog. It's not failure, but low aim that is sin. Please read all of it. It is posted on X. It's posted on LinkedIn. Also, it's published on Medium. So, and I love to also have conversations with y'all.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I'll definitely share that to my socials as
Yes.
well. Obviously,
Please tag me all the time.
Yep. Before we post, that way people will remember when the post comes out.
Right.
But the one way I like to end the podcast is if you had one thing to recommend to the listeners, viewers, whether it be a podcast, quote, book, personal piece of advice, what would it be?
God. Okay, we'll start with personal piece of advice because I mentioned earlier, you really to have a beginner's mindset. Every day is new again, right? I mentioned, my feeling is for those that deem themselves experts, never see possibilities. And, so embrace that. In regards to books and podcasts, do we have an extra half an hour for that? Of course,
We'll put it in a running tab at the end of a movie.
And we share so many of the similar likes,
Yes.
and that's why we're friends. Books, of course, Winning by Tim Grover. I love Atomic Habits. The Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I'm currently reading, I think I mentioned earlier, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. There's so many, but that's like a short list. Podcasts. I love Modern Wisdom, by Chris Williamson. The Huberman Lab. I love Adam Grant. Work Life podcast is a great one. Rich Roll has a great one that I really like. We talked about earlier in our conversation about identity, finding your tribe, feeling inspired, finding that intellectual curiosity. I know that there might be some listening or watching that might find their place in life right now maybe empty or unfulfilled and all that stuff. To say that, yes, it's great personal relationships, whether it be in person, or online, virtual. But I always use so many of those books and podcasts to really energize me, sometimes to provide me comfort, enlighten me. And so always, again, we say surround yourself with people that make you better. Also surround yourself with books and podcasts and videos that make you better too. So.
Well, Bob, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Isaac. I loved being here.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, well overdue, but finally got to see each other.
Yes, finally. Exactly. Persistence.
Yes, keep getting after it.
Thank you.